Scotland boasts a history colourful and compelling enough to rank with that of any other country in the world. Its triumphs, its tragedies, its struggles, and all its splendour are now captured forever in over 300 sites in the care of historic Scotland. One of its beautiful coastline towns is Dundee, dominated by the River Tay and scene of many a bloody battle of old. This year, however, encounters of quite a different kind were planned, as the town prepared to greet the giants of offshore powerboat racing. For the good people of Dundee, it was indeed a very special occasion. The Lord Provost explains.
I think we have a fantastic location here. The River Tay is traditionally been used as an area where small yachts sail, but something on this scale has never ever been tried before. It brings a lot of attention to the city, and it also brings a lot of interest. We reckon about upwards of about 100,000 people will be in the city to see this event. And there's a great buzz about the place, and the people of Dundee are really enjoying it and looking forward to tomorrow.
For the crews too, the Tay was a challenge to savour. Away from the glitzy Mediterranean offshore resorts, the estuary, with its unpredictable currents and obstacles, would test new skills in boat handling and navigation. And with the championship nicely balanced, in the fourth round, points would always be hard to come by. One man perhaps relishing the prospect more than most was the only Briton, Steve Curtis. Teamed up with Italian Lamberto Leone in the Bill Bacady outfit, Curtis is ranked amongst the best throttlemen in the world, although here he had problems.
How was testing for you this morning? Have you been out testing this morning?
Yeah, it was pretty lousy. Yeah, we got a little problem with one. Well, we think we got a little problem, but we can't find out what it is yet. We've been dogged by the problem all week, and we really just can't get to the bottom of it yet.
The boys are hard at work now.
Yeah, we're changing stuff, and we're sort of grabbing at straws right now. I mean, although it run reasonably well, it just doesn't have the speed that it had before.
Are you running your gearboxes?
Yeah, we're running the gearbox in this race. If half the race course is in flat, sort of calm water, and half is in rough water, we can actually, run better in the rough and the calm by changing gear to suit the, the speed we're going. But depending on the weather conditions, right now it won't give us much of an advantage because it's pretty flat all over the course.
So once the crews made their final preparations and decisions in the deteriorating conditions, they were split pretty evenly. Half had decided smaller propellers for rough conditions were the order of the day, while the rest went for a fast, flat encounter. One man opting for the flat and larger propellers is Randy Sissom, throttleman on Victory 7 and co-championship leader. But it was a decision he knew only too well he could regret. However, as the crews thread their way out into the river for the start, Sissom's decision was beginning to look a good one. The wind was picking up and it started to rain. The course was a simple one, a straight run down the estuary past Broughty Castle, 5 miles into the open sea and back under the bridge. 19.35 nautical miles 7 times and a total race distance of 138.6 nautical miles. And if racing under the bridge at 140 miles per hour had created a great deal of hot air, it had little to do with the great carnival atmosphere building up for the big occasion. And in spite of the rain, huge crowds were gathering along both sides of the estuary, armed with camcorders, cameras and umbrellas, and determined that nothing would spoil their day. Dundee had never seen anything like it, and everybody wanted to join in. And this is what they'd come to see, a sight worth travelling the world to watch, the start of a Class 1 offshore powerboat race, and the deafening roar of 40,000 unsilenced horsepower. The early lead was held by the two red Bilbao boats, number 10, Italian Edoardo Polli nearest the camera, and 24, Britain Steve Curtis furthest away. But it wasn't for long before the boats were 4 miles out. The Arab-American duo of Kalfan Hareb and Ed Collier in Victory 1 were back to the sort of form that made them world champions in 1993. And all Polly, Curtis and the rest could do was watch. But it was unlucky for 13, Spirit of Hyatt, Vincenzo Polli and Ugo Colombo, out with early engine problems. Back at the front, Vincenzo Polli's uncle Edoardo, number 10, having lost the lead, was under attack again. This time from number 11, the yellow Eckert-powered CUV Cat of Fabio Giri and Massimo Lippi. And it wasn't long before the rest joined in. Victory 2 on the left, number 4 LPR Jolly Motors on the right, and Victory 7 on the outside. And suddenly Polly was 6, and there was little he could do about that. Meanwhile, up front, Hareb and Collier continued to increase the gap, with Victory 2, Altari and Sorales taking over from Gira and Lippi in second. This was another impressive start from the all-conquering Victory team, but could they hold on to it? Storming through the pack, number 3, Norberto Ferretti's GSE Philosophy on the left, had both Sism and Carrain in his wake, and battle had commenced. But there was plenty of work to do. The current champions, without a win in the first 3 rounds, were beginning to look invincible. However, by the halfway point on the lap, they still led. But the infight between Ferretti and the rest of the pack had now reduced the lead to around 100 metres. And in that pack, Sism and his rough water propellers must have questioned the decision. It was as rough as it was going to get, and he was only 4th. Having dropped back to 6, Edoardo Polli, number 10, was now back on the pace. He was definitely a shade quicker than Sism and slid into 4th. Meanwhile, after briefly holding second, Jacopo Carrain in number 4, LPR Jolly Motors, was sliding the other way. This was 6, and the Lamborghini-powered Tenkara Catamaran was under pressure now from Curtis, number 24. But there was still steady progress for the other Tenkara Cat, number 3 Ferretti, joint leader in the championship on 66 points with Sism and Bouhaliba. He was now 6 seconds adrift, and that, in offshore terms, is pretty close. But the next problem for the leader was not the boat behind, but the bridge in front. Hareb was the first to test the degree of difficulty. And at close on 140 miles per hour proved it was no problem at all. Hareb's time at the end of the lap was 12 minutes and 9 seconds. That's an average speed of just over 110 miles per hour. And in driving rain, it was some performance. Ferretti followed in 12.21 seconds for an average of 108.25. Sism arrived at the bridge in 4th ahead of Carrain, but still hadn't found a way past teammate Altaya, number 2. He was through in 12 minutes 30 seconds. And they still all had to catch number 1 and number 3, 10 seconds ahead. For Ferretti, becoming Class 1 world champion is becoming an obsession since lifting the Class 2 crown in 1989. He's invested countless millions in his boyhood dream. Meanwhile, back at the bridge, less than 6 seconds separated 7th, 8th and 9th, with Curtis just holding off Gira and Ramazzotti. At the halfway point on lap 2, little had changed. Up front, Ferretti, in spite of his screaming Lamborghinis, was still 10 seconds down on Hareb, although the tight turns for which he is renowned were keeping him in touch. And behind, the battle for third was keeping him on his toes. But it was another good lap for Hareb and his throttleman Ed Collier. And with their two Stirling engines now pumping out close on 2,000 horsepower, things were looking good. And they were looking up too for Sism and Bouhaliba in Victory 7. It had taken them almost 2 laps, but now at last the overpowering of Altara was duly completed, and they moved into third. And such was a towering battle ahead. Carrane and Pansini, although still fifth, were now 1 minute and 11 seconds off the lead, and dropping back. And dropping out, Norway's Andreas Ugland and Jan Hilstad, still pointless in the championship. Back to the bridge. Hareb duly conducted it safely on lap 2, and he was still in the lead. The average speed had crept up to 110.18 miles per hour, and the gap was now 10 seconds. But significantly, Ferretti was accelerating, albeit only 0.13 miles per hour faster than Hareb. With 5 laps to go, that would be enough. And with Sism outpacing them all at 111.56 miles per hour, it was far from over. Welcome back to round 4 of the Class 1 Offshore Powerboat Championships in Dundee, where early leader Karfan Hareb was about to learn the harsh realities of reliability. It was simple. After just 2.5 laps, the victory boat slowed dramatically, pulled into the centre of the course, and that was that. The early present was gratefully accepted by Ferretti, who suddenly saw the opportunity to open up a lead at the top of the table, and he pressed on. However, the breakdown for Hareb and Collier was devastating. The hallmark of their 1993 success was reliability. Now, still without a win in 94, and only 15 points from 2 finishes and 1 engine, things are getting desperate. Not that teammates Sism and Bouhaliba were too bothered about that. They gratefully accepted second and went in search of greater things, knowing that if they should falter, Altair and Sorellis were ready to pounce. So far, Curtis number 24 had remained pretty quiet, but suddenly on lap 3 with Hareb out of the way, and having taken Polly and Carrane in quick succession, he found himself 5th. Even so, on home territory and in desperate need of a win, this was disappointing. However, another bonus was on the way. Number 11, Gira and Lippi, and Luigi Benetton in 4th position, became the 6th victim of mechanical failure, and Curtis moved into 4th. Things were certainly on the up now for the Englishman. Mind you, with Carrane this close on your heels, there's still plenty to think about. And with Rampazzotti pushing it all along in 6th, just 4 seconds behind, a lot could still happen. Leading the diesel-powered fleet at the end of lap 3 and 7th was Giancarlo Coletti and Duilio Boffi in number 22 Masseth. But it's odd to recall that just 3 years ago, this 40-foot catamaran and its giant Osotta Frassini engines would be a force to be reckoned with, but not anymore. These days, the front runners once again burn petrol. And on this occasion, it was still Ferretti who led them. Mind you, Sism was never far away, and with Altair keeping up the pressure in 3rd, no one could relax. For Ferretti, the dilemma was clear. He knew Sism could call on extra power by removing his rev limiters. But did he know the American had chosen the wrong propellers? Obviously not. For Sism, it was much simpler. In spite of all his extra boost, Ferretti would always be quicker. His key was to keep the pressure on and hope the Italian would brake. And for Altair, much the same would apply, only he was hoping they would both brake. Behind them all, Curtis was still on a roll. He had pulled back 28 seconds on Altair on the lap and was now only 2 minutes 8 seconds adrift. And I wonder if Carrane and Rampazzotti had anything to do with that. And there was soon to be further potential problems for Curtis. Ramprezzotti, winner of the 1992 Guernsey Grand Prix, found an extra notch on his throttle, passed Corraine, and went in search of fourth. The response from Curtis was immediate. He posted his quickest lap of the day at 107.39 miles per hour. He kept his foot and head down. Mind you, it was taking all his skill as one of the world's top throttle men to keep things under control. And at these speeds, a catamaran is more akin to an aeroplane. But takeoff is fatal. At the end of the fourth lap, it was still status quo, with Sism passing under the bridge on one side in second, while Ferretti was passing under the other side in first, and 15 seconds was the gap. Altair had lost a further second and third, and now trailed by 13. Well, Curtis still had over 2 minutes to pull back if he was to make the podium. But he had, however, been granted a small breather. Ramprezzotti had lost power, and Corraine moved back into fifth, but was now 23 seconds behind. In second position, the chances of victory were beginning to look bleak for Sism. The last half lap had cost him another 7 seconds, and he suddenly looked resigned to accepting the runners-up slot. Well, that was the gap, and with Ferretti in rampant mood as they turned back towards Dundee for the 5th time, it was a mountain to climb. However, Sism did have the incentive of Altair's presence to spur him on, and as he well knows in offshore powerboat racing, anything can happen. Ferretti, still mindful of Sism's ability to produce extra power when necessary, was still posting fastest laps. This one was 113.62 miles per hour, now a clear 2 miles per hour faster than the American. And ironically, number 23, DeMarco and Luigi had just posted their quickest lap at 102.97. Not that it did them a lot of good. One road too many saw to that. So, at the end of the 5th, with just 2 to go, it still looked odds-on for an Italian victory. Ferretti's screaming 4-valve Lamborghinis now 24 seconds ahead of Sism's more sedate Sterlings. And there was still precious little Sism could do. The risk of removing the engine limiters for the remainder of the race was too great, and even if he did, Ferretti was a long way clear. And there was a problem with teammate Altair, number 2. From 111.41 miles per hour on lap 4, here on lap 6 he dropped back to 100.39, slowing dramatically and then speeding up again. Clearly a fuel problem, and one over which he had no control. But it was good news for Curtis. After 7th position on lap 1, here was a golden opportunity to at least get on the podium, or maybe something even better. Behind him, the battle between Corraine and Ramprezzotti had once again swung the other way, with the red number 5, Agrati, now leading the charge for 5th. However, Corraine is a fighter and carried on in hot pursuit at the 40 seconds he'd suddenly lost. And, however, no doubt well aware that Coletti's turbocharged diesels were now whispering in his ears, just 26 seconds astern. Ahead, and now less than a minute up on Curtis in 4th, Altair's stop-go momentum was still giving cause for grave concern in the victory camp, and it was looking doubtful whether he could complete the course. But by now, Curtis was fired up by the reducing gap and was throwing caution to the wind. A top 3 finish he had promised, and now was the time to deliver, although at times it looked precarious. Unlike Ferretti in the longer boat. For Ferretti and his throttleman Ferrari, there was now just one lap to go, and still travelling in excess of 113 miles per hour, the result looked a foregone conclusion. Such was Ferretti's dominance that he was about to lap the 1992 champion Walter Ragazzi, wallowing in ninth. Even Sissom, now 35 seconds down, had thrown in the towel and had resigned himself to starting the 5th round at Arendal in Norway, 12 points off the top of the pile. The main issue, it seemed, was could the surging Altair, still clinging desperately to third, fight off the high-flying Englishman. Well, there was no doubt he still had problems, reduced once again to a crawl around the West End mark. Now, it was surely time for him to throw in the towel. Well, Curtis certainly thought so. He was piling down the back straight at over 130 miles per hour. Under the bridge, into the corner, and ready for the kill, and the move into third. But when he got there, Altair had gone. There was obviously still a long way to go in this race. Welcome back to Dundee, where the final dramas of the 4th round of the World Class 1 Offshore Powerboat Championship were about to unfurl. When you left us, runaway leader Ferretti was on his last lap with a cushion of 35 seconds over second-place Sissom, and averaging over 113 miles per hour. Well, this was now the desperate situation for the Italian. Demolished by an ailing engine, he now trails the American with precious little time to mount a recovery. It really was a tragedy for Ferretti. Instead of going to Norway 12 points up, he would now arrive there 8 points in arrears. That was if he could finish. And with one engine getting sicker by the second, there was now some doubt about that. And for Sissom, well, Christmas really had come early. But as he will tell you, luck plays a big part in these championships. He should know. He certainly suffered his share of the bad variety in 1993. Not that Ferretti had fared any better. He went into the last 2 rounds in Dubai in 1993 with high hopes of becoming champion, only to be thwarted by 2 mechanical gremlins and eventually finishing third. But all that was history. Here, Sissom and Buhaleba were clear. And although they were still to serve notice that a race is never won until you cross the line safely. And that was close. Under the bridge then for the final time, and with just 2 miles to go, Sissom eased up and prepared to take the checkered flag. And delighted though he must have felt, his sympathies, I'm sure, would have been with this man. So clearly a winner for 6.5 laps, Ferretti was robbed at the death. But at least it wasn't terminal. He was still holding second, and although small consolation, at least he was still in touch in the championship. And so exactly 1 hour, 24 minutes, 0.59 seconds after the start, Sissom and Buhaleba crossed the finish line for the 2nd victory of the year. The clenched fist said it all, although most would agree there was as much relief as there was celebration. This was an important win at a crucial point, and they knew it. Well, Ferretti duly limped home second, 18 points to reward, but more importantly, 12 points lost. The Victory team had done it again. Following a stunning debut in '93, they're once again in pole position in '94. And good news too for Britain's Steve Curtis with Italian Lamberto Leone. He got his bronze. The Resorts Board showing yet another victory for Victory, with Ferretti and Ferrari losing out on the very last lap. But just reward for Curtis and Leone, that third place hard-earned with some fearless driving in the short skater catamaran. And with Altair another last lap victim, Lulio and Rampazzotti leapfrogged into fourth. Coletti and Boppi's Diesel's fifth, Carrane and Pansini's Lamborghini sixth, and Achilles still with problems in seventh. And so, on a very damp podium, there were 3 Italians, 1 American, 1 Arab and a Brit, with the boys from Dubai, the pick of the bunch. Overall in the championship, once again, Sism and Buhaleba pulled clear, with Ferretti and Ferrari still the main threat, and Curtis still waiting for his first win in third. In spite of drawing a blank here, Altair and Sorellis hold on to fourth, with Lulio and Rampazzotti up to fifth, with nothing better than a 6 for the reigning champions. And this was the winner.
You were running a little behind GSE today in terms of speed. Now, do you have that speed in which to keep up with him?
Actually, he was better than us today, prop-wise. I think his new transmissions they've got is excellent for rough water and flat water because you can always have the optimum propeller. Like I say, we got a little greedy and went for top end. We could catch him in the flat water and chase him down. He'd make a corner downshift and leave us like we were tied to a tree. We'd try and chase him down again. We'd get in the rough water and he'd have an advantage again and we'd chase him. But no, they ran great today. They did a good job.